Today's episode of The Majority Report is brought to you by Season 2 of the podcast Blowback, exclusively available on Stitcher Premium. After a critically acclaimed retelling of the Iraq War, Season 2 of Blowback, co-hosted by Brendan James and Noah Colwin, is a 10-part account of the unlikely story of the Cuban Revolution. It's a nuclear-tipped showdown between the Kennedy brothers, Fidel Castro, the Soviet Union, the CIA, and the Mafia. To listen now and get a free month of Stitcher Premium, go to Stitcher.com/premium. Enter the promo code MAJORITY when you select a monthly plan. That's Stitcher.com/premium, promo code MAJORITY. We had at least Brendan, I think, on back when they did the first episode of the first series of this. Friend of show, John Benjamin, participated in that one. This one I am super psyched to check out. That is promo code MAJORITY at Stitcher.com/premium. And now for this show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, May 3rd, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, freelance journalist and author of Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 other myths about mass incarceration, Victoria Law will be joining us. Also on the program today, India on fire. More than 400,000 new COVID cases on Saturday, as the White House now imposes travel restrictions from India. Democrats' unity fraying on the infrastructure bill as the corporatists push back on new taxes for the rich. Speaking of which, President Joe Manchin has now come out publicly stymieing statehood for Washington, D.C. All the while, Democratic House retirements threaten the majority. It's one of those use it because you're probably going to lose it moments. Biden cancels the border wall projects that were from the diverted funds from the military. AP reports progress on the Iran nuclear deal talks. White House suspends Trump's loosening of drone rules, which allowed for a little less certainty about whether civilian casualties would take place. The government ineffectiveness myth takes a bit of a hit. Private companies wasted more vaccinations than most government agencies combined. And new report shows the third round of COVID relief checks led to the largest household income rise in 60 years. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us at the beginning of this week. Joining me as well, of course, as she does every day, Emma Vigeland. Emma, hello. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Good. My son is starting 5 days a week school, starting tomorrow. That's exciting.
4 days a week this week, but
well, you know, you ease into it.
Yeah.
4 days. The teachers had to get ready. They had to set up classrooms. They had to.
That's exciting.
It is exciting. And of course, you know, the new CDC guidelines about if you're outside and you're not around a bunch of people, like crowds, I should say, no mask. I notice in Brooklyn still a lot of mask wearing. I think people are going to ease into it, but I find myself, I wear it on my chin when I'm walking to work now, which I quite enjoy. Not the chin part, but just not having it over the face. But I also want to signal, like, it's still going on out there. People got to be careful.
Yeah. I noticed when I walked to work this morning, I totally forgot to take it down, and I wanted to enjoy it because it's a little warmer out. But I got to the office, I was like, oh, well. Because, we're just so used to it at this point. I don't really notice.
Well, and good
Although
for you.
Tucker Carlson would say, obviously, I should be
I was going to
thrown
say,
in jail. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The horror of anything that would, any type of theater that would indicate, hey, we still need to be concerned about people who haven't gotten vaccinated, either by choice or because they can't, because maybe they're immunosuppressed, maybe they are going through cancer treatment, maybe they're under the age of 16, whatever it is. And the idea that there would be people out there who are just angry about this, that there are people who are going to sort of like ease into it and be overly cautious, and the amazing thing is too, is that, like, we're not living in shutdowns. In most places, there are some places, I think, in the country where there's still some, it's raging. But for the most part, we're not living with shutdowns. The economy is better today. It's not great, but it's better today than it has been at any other time in the past year. Mm-hmm. So the idea that people would just get mad about the fact that other people are wearing masks is, I think that those people really need to sort of do a self-check and maybe talk to a therapist.
Live and let live, Tucker. Live and let live.
Well, it's not just Tucker Carlson. It's just like there's a whole movement around this, it seems like.
Yeah, it's odd. The personal responsibility people seem to be the most triggered by the actions of others.
It really is sort of stunning that way. Yeah. All right, let's play this clip. We've reported that Austin, Texas, has at different times over the past couple of months cut parts of their police budget to purchase hotels for unhoused people to live in. We have a massive homelessness problem in this country. There are approximately 700,000 unhoused people. About 200,000 of those people are unsheltered. So, or 200,000 to 300,000 are unsheltered. And these are rough numbers, obviously. And by unsheltered, I mean, like, you're not being provided with any type of like temporary sheltering. And temporary sheltering is a different type of problem insofar as it does not solve the problem. And so here is how Austin, Texas voters apparently responded to what are, small tent encampments that are happening in Austin, Texas, and how overjoyed. We should say there are 17 million empty homes per the Census Bureau in 2019. This is how Fox and Friends and the Republican in charge of this referendum campaign celebrated this weekend by essentially criminalizing people trying to find a place to sleep in a tent.
People of Austin, Texas, taking a stand against the city's homeless crisis. Over the weekend, more than 85,000 voted in favor of bringing back the ban on public camping after the city's Democratic mayor rescinded that law 2 years ago. Save Austin Now is the political action committee behind the push to reinstate the ban, and its founder, Travis County Republican Party Chair Matt Macoviak, joins us now. Hey, Matt.
Good morning, Ainsley. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Thanks for being on with us. You had a great weekend.
We did, but more importantly, our city had a great weekend. We were right up along the edge of the abyss, looking down, and I think our city took a major step backwards, actually. But by taking that step backwards, we took a major step forwards. Our city's never been less safe than it is right now. I've lived here since 1984. And the homeless camping ordinance has really been destroying our city, destroying every neighborhood, every major intersection, every city park. It's simply not working. And in fact, a camping ordinance has never worked anywhere it's ever been tried. If you've been to Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Honolulu, you know this firsthand. And so we had an overwhelming victory over the weekend. We've worked for the last 10 weeks since this issue was put on the ballot. And we believe we won 40% of Democratic votes, 88% of independent votes, and 92% of Republican votes in one of the more progressive cities in the country. We think that's a model that can be used in other cities as well. And we're excited that we took this specific action to restore public safety and public health for our city and for our citizens.
It's unbelievable that some of these leaders want to allow this, even for their own safety, for the homeless population's safety. There's got to be a better solution.
Yeah, well,
she may be on to something.
why don't you talk about some of those solutions, maybe? Perhaps actually providing housing for people instead of treating having a roof over your head as some sort of privilege only afforded to the bootstrapped few. But this Prop B, which I believe is being introduced throughout the state. Am I wrong?
I'm not 100% sure where it goes next.
Yeah, but it's backed by millions of dollars in Republican cash, and it was an attempt to basically penalize the Austin City Council for putting more progressive houseless measures in place to deal with people humanely and make sure that we aren't just this incredibly callous society. It criminalizes panhandling, camping, sleeping on public sidewalks, or even sitting on public sidewalks, meaning that it could be subject to fines. And they say, oh, we're not going to throw homeless people in jail or houseless people in jail. But what happens when the poorest among us cannot pay the fines that you're going to level at them?
Hundreds of dollars worth of fines. And of course, it also puts these folks gives the police officers, the cops, a perfect opportunity to interact with people and roll them up. And so this is going to end up, essentially, you're criminalizing being unhoused. The organizers in Austin are saying that they were spent 10 to 1, outspent, I should say, 10 to 1 on the vote, of course.
There's not a lot of money on the protecting houseless people side of things.
No. And this story of just sort of criminalizing another group of people and the dynamic here, sadly, dovetails nicely with what our next guest is going to talk about. We will be right back and talk to Victoria Law. She's a freelance journalist and author of Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 other myths about mass incarceration. We'll be right back after this. Folks, one of the things that you know that I am incredibly efficient with my time, which is actually true. I realized the other day, like I don't.
You don't dilly-dally.
I don't dilly-dally. I don't dilly-dally.
Or dawdle.
I don't dawdle. I mean, how do I justify taking a walk to work? I mean, now that I'm vaccinated, I could take on the subway, save myself 10 minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Well, how do I justify that? It's I multitask. How do I multitask? Well, some days what I do is I use my app called Blinkist. Why? Because Blinkist is for anyone who cares about learning but doesn't have a lot of time. And those two things describe me. What it does is it takes the key ideas from over something like 4,000 nonfiction bestsellers in over 27 categories. It gathers them together into 15-minute text, which I tend not to use because I'm walking. I can't read it. Or audio explainers, or what they call blinks. And you use blinks for any different things. One, so you can get into a topic quickly, or you find new topics that you're interested in, test them out. You don't have to make too much of a commitment. Same with books. Hey, maybe I'll read this book. I don't know. What's it about? I'm not sure. I'm going to check my Blink. For me, it's also, I have a couple of different subsets. I will use Blinkist to look at books that maybe I don't necessarily want to read, but, feel like I should have some passing awareness of, just in case I ever in my life go to a cocktail party, which I don't think I ever have. But it's possible as I age, maybe.
Right.
So maybe that's how I'll check out Blowout by Rachel Maddow, for instance. But I also have things like where I'm like, I want the key takeaways. I don't need everything else. I'm not going to read the prose. And I did that with The Barefoot Investor because I was like, you know what? I have no idea about like how personal finance or anything like that. So I checked that out, but I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. And Blinkist has even teamed up with popular podcasts and have created blinks for those too, so you can get to the heart of the podcast episode fast. I don't know about this one. I think you could probably do that just if you had some type of program to take out all of my ahs and ums, but forget that for a second. 15 million people are already using Blinkist to broaden their knowledge, like I said, in 27 nonfiction categories like self-improvement, management, mindfulness, and more. You can check it out, folks. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer for just our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/Majority Report. You start your 7-day free trial, and then you get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Majority Report to get 25% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/Majority Report. Check it out. We will put the that information in our podcast and YouTube description, as will we do with Liquid IV. Every day now, I start my day, and then through the course of the show, and frankly, over the weekend too, because I'm out there, I'm doing yard work, or I'm doing I'm doing a little baseball coaching, assistant coaching, pony league. Never mind, that's exhausting, believe me. And I'm feeling a little dehydrated. I don't want to get dehydrated. Liquid IV. They have a hydration multiplier plus immune support at the moment is their latest flavor. It's tangerine. It's delicious. I mix it up. Sometimes I go with the immune support. Sometimes I go with my green sort of matcha version for energy.
That seems to be your favorite.
That is my favorite, but I'm trying to cut back a little bit on it. It's the equivalent of of 2 cups of coffee from the matcha.
Gotcha.
But I'm trying to go back, cut back on that. So I've been doing the immune support. It's got vitamin C, it's got zinc, it's got Wellmune, and Liquid IV. It's got that cellular transport technology, which allows for rapid intake of other nutrients and the absorption of water. But today I tried the strawberry. And it's delicious.
You were telling me that before the show, so jury's in. You liked it?
I like it.
I like strawberry too. I like the acai most, but the strawberry one is my, home flavor. I got a bunch of strawberry at my apartment.
I'm about to make one of the most embarrassing. I don't know why it's embarrassing, but
it's because you're embarrassed. You told me this anecdote before the show. You're reliving embarrassment from college.
So they have a pina colada flavor, and I love it. And I have been known amongst some of my friends as always opting for a pina colada if that's ever an option at a bar.
So there you go. That's you felt like that was girly in college, and now you're feeling...
It's not so much that it's girly. It's just that it's sort of like that's the drink you have, like you have virgin pina coladas when you're a kid.
I'm a huge spicy margarita. I used to have virgin daiquiris, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, well, I'm a pina colada guy. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But Liquid IV can provide 2 to 3 times more hydration than water alone. With every purchase, Liquid IV donates a serving of Liquid IV to someone in need. The company's donated over 10 million servings globally, including 4 million servings in response to COVID-19. You can get your Liquid IV's hydration multiplier plus immune support in bulk at Costco, or you can order online and get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code MajorityRep at checkout. It's 25% off anything you order when you get better hydration today using promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. In fact, strawberry, folks. All right. Now I'd like to welcome to the program, back to the program, Victoria Law. She is a freelance journalist and author of Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration. Victoria, thanks for joining us again. I know we talked a couple of months ago in the wake of the reports of the increase in Asian hate and the sort of the failure of incarceration to really address that. But welcome back. I'm here with Emma Vigeland, and congratulations on the book.
Thanks. And thanks, Sam and Emma, for having me back.
So let's start in with what you see as the biggest myth I mean, maybe the giveaway is on the book, but I mean, let's start this way, since that's a pretty easy spoiler alert. But let's start with this. Like, presumably, when society looks at prisons, what presumably do prisons? What function do they serve? Presumably.
So presumably, imprisoning somebody or prisons serve the function of one of three things: deterrence. So people are afraid of being imprisoned, so this deters them from harmful behaviors or illegal behaviors. Incapacitation, so you remove that person from society and they are no longer at large in the community or at risk to other people in the community. And the third myth about mass incarceration is that it provides some sort of justice for the victims that somebody has harmed. So these are the prevalent myths about why we need mass incarceration. And that's actually not the case. People are not deterred by threats of imprisonment. As we talked about in the last time I was on your show, we see this rise in anti-Asian violence, and that has not been deterred by hate crime laws, more policing, more outrage about the situation, people being arrested. It does incapacitate people, but eventually people are released from prison and it doesn't stop. And it ignores the fact that there is violence prevalent in the prisons at the same time. So you just move somebody from one situation to another and you don't address harmful, illegal, and violent behaviors. And many victims don't feel a sense of closure or justice just because the person has been taken away. It doesn't address many of the other needs they might have, say for medical care or, mental health counseling if they've been traumatized by a violent attack. Maybe they need to take time off of work because of, the violence they suffered, and that doesn't cover that either.
Can you talk about specifically the lack of deterrence, the myth about deterrence in regards to sexual assault, rape, sexual violence in general? Because I think that the lack of justice in the traditional sense when it comes to those crimes is an especially stark example of how our current imagining of a justice system that includes the threat of imprisonment, it has failed in so many ways.
Yes. I mean, what we see in the traditional police, prosecution, and prison system is that, in fact, it does not actually provide a lot of justice for people who have suffered sexual assault in the first place. I mean, according to the Department of Justice's own victims reporting and crime victims reporting reports, only 230 of every 1,000 rapes are reported to the police. So that's less than 1/4. And from there, the numbers just get smaller. Only 46 lead to arrests. So that's about 20% of that, very small number. Only 9 are referred to prosecution. And of those, only 5 result in a conviction. So that is a startlingly small statistic. And people are not deterred from sexually assaulting people because A, they know that it is not an act or a crime that is taken seriously. In many instances, we live in a society where again and again and again, men are taught that women's bodies or women's nose are not to be taken seriously, like that they have access to this. We live in a society that sexualizes girls and young women from a very young age. And again, there is not this idea that people are deterred by the threat of prison, because the threat of prison, if it is on somebody's horizon, is how can I do this thing and avoid going to prison, not I should not do this harmful action because I will go to prison at some point.
And how do we assess that? Just the premise, the top line of your book. Like, I mean, how do we say that prisons don't make us safer? If someone says, well, look, I don't know what the recidivism rate is, or the rate which people commit multiple, let's say, violent crimes, but I don't. If this guy gets locked up, I don't care if he's rehabilitated. I'm not interested in that. I just want him off the streets so he can't harm someone else. How do we know that doesn't work, or do we know? Or so in that instance, when someone says that as for making it safer, how do we know that that's not the case?
Well, what we see again and again is that people who go to prison don't come out, quote unquote, rehabilitated. And the majority of people in prison do come out. They return back to the same communities that are often under-resourced and have a lack of opportunities for people to actually do meaningful things in their lives, or be able to get help for any underlying mental health or anger management or whatever, things that drove them to do this harmful behavior in the first place. And in addition, they now have a felony record, which closes even these small doors of opportunities to them. And in the meantime, they've spent 1, 2, 3, 5 years in a loud, chaotic, violent environment that actually teaches us the opposite of what we want to teach all of our kindergartners. Don't hit, use your words, like take a deep breath, don't have outbursts, don't throw tantrums, don't throw bodily fluids at people, et cetera, et cetera. And instead, they're put in this environment where all of that is topsy-turvy, and you are taught that you have to, that you have to fight, you have to be aggressive, you have to not seem like you are weak. And these are not things that we actually want in our society. We don't want a bunch of people running around trying to be the biggest bully, but that's what prison conditions people to do. So people come home, they have a lack of opportunity, and what they then have are skills and behaviors that they've learned in order to survive in prison, which leads to then more harm and more criminal activity. I mean, we see people who have repeat offenses is that it starts small, burglary, theft, something else, and it starts to gradually increase. And then you're like, okay, so this person was incarcerated at age 12 for breaking into the department store and stealing X number of, items. Then at age 16, they were arrested for dealing drugs. And then at age, 20, they were arrested for assault, and it keeps going up. So obviously imprisonment has not taught them not to engage in criminal behaviors or violent behaviors. And I would say it actually does the opposite. I mean, there's also the school of thought that prisons are training grounds for career criminals, because you learn to get away with more things. You learn other behaviors that we don't actually want people to learn when they come home, instead of learning how to take that ability to calculate numbers and everything else that you might have if you were dealing illicit substances, and taking that and using it in some legalized way. You're going to be figuring out oh, I can do this, that, or the other instead and make myself a quick buck, especially since my options for legal employment are closed.
I mean, essentially, particularly, when we're talking about younger people, we're sending them to vocational school. Mm-hmm. It just so happens that instead of learning a trade like plumbing or electricity or construction, it's how to do crime, essentially. Mm-hmm. Yes. Talk about the myth that private prisons drive mass incarceration.
So that has been the myth that private prisons drive mass incarceration has been very prevalent over the past decade, as more and more people are aware that we have 2.2 million people behind bars. But private prisons didn't come into play until the 1980s, when prison populations were already on the rise, and private corporations saw an opportunity to make money off of caging people. But while they incarcerate, while the United States has about 2.2 million people in prison, only 8% of people in prison are in privately run prisons. That's different than in immigration detention, where the private corporations run 73% of immigration detention facilities. But in terms of imprisonment, where you go to court, you're convicted, you're sentenced to X number of years in prison, it's not a very large number of people in private prisons. And even if you close private prisons, which we've seen in several states such as Kentucky, people are not necessarily released. They're just shuffled into government-run prisons. It's not that Kentucky said, okay, let's look at everybody that is now in prison and who can we safely release to be able to reduce the prison population so we no longer need to contract with this private company. Instead, what they do is They say, okay, we're no longer contracting with this private company because they have a horrible record of abuses and injustices and terrible conditions. So we're shuffling everybody back into our government-run prisons, which may also have a terrible record of abuses, injustices, and terrible conditions, but they are government-run, not privately run.
Let's deal with the myths. I mean, we just told the story of Austin, Texas, where a referendum, where apparently there was a tremendous amount of money behind this, has almost like recriminalized being homeless. Having a house has become, according to this referendum, more or less an opportunity for police to come and interact with you and give you a whole array of these police, a whole array of things in which they could ticket you for. You get fined. Obviously, you're not making a lot of money. Go home, and so how does there are myths around prisons, dealing with issues of substance abuse, issues with mental problems that folks might be having, and that it deals with all the sort of like ancillary impacts of being homeless. That at the very least, you'll get 3 square and you'll get some type of treatment for any type of issues. And part of that is built into the myths of what makes people homeless, which is lack of affordable housing. But talk about the myths about what prison addresses in terms of people's societal problems, I guess.
Yes. So there is a myth that people will get treatment in prison, whether it's mental health treatment, drug treatment, medical care, that many of us on the outside cannot get easily. And what this myth does is it perpetuates the idea that some people are better off when they are locked away because they get this treatment. But in reality, people actually don't get mental health treatment. In many jails and prisons around the country, even those that call themselves like mental health jails, there's a severe shortage of mental health staff. People are told that they should be medicated. So when people go and they say, I'm suffering from X, Y, and Z, the answer is to medicate them. Many people don't want to take medication because it makes them feel slow. They don't like the side effects. They don't feel like it helps. But there's not a deeper trying to grapple with what is happening with this person that is causing these things. In many cases, too, people are unable to access mental health and medical care. I mean, we saw this most starkly this past year when the coronavirus swept through jails and prisons, where people would try to access medical care to say, we just realized the guy serving food in our unit came down with COVID. We don't feel so well. We would all like to go get COVID tested. This happened at Rikers Island in March or April of last year. And instead of bringing these people to the medical unit, which would have benefited everybody, including the correctional officers who had to be in close contact with people on that unit, they pepper sprayed them. And so that is not in anybody's books, good medical care, good COVID protocol. So there is this barrier to medical and mental health care that people also have. And then there's also just a lack of that kind of care in the first place. There's often staff shortages. There's often 1 or 2 providers for facilities that have hundreds, if not thousands of people. And then there aren't enough slots. So there aren't enough slots in counseling groups. There aren't enough drug treatment slots for everybody who's in there. So many people just languish. And again, I said that prisons are places of violence and abuse and chaos, and they're loud and they're chaotic. And these often exacerbate people's existing mental health conditions. So it's not like anybody gets better while they are in prison because they are in prison.
One of the myths that you talk about is that people are in prison for nonviolent drug offenses, and if we let them out, we'll end mass incarceration. And that's not the case. Give us a sense of who exactly is in prison, or for what, for what, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So over the past few years, we've seen radical changes to drug laws in several states and jurisdictions, which have reduced the number of people being sent to prison specifically for nonviolent drug offenses. I mean, in in the early 2000s, New York repealed its Rockefeller drug laws, which stated that if you had 2 to 4 ounces of a narcotic substance such as cocaine or crack cocaine, you would face a mandatory 15 years to life sentence. And that swelled the prison population. We have similar laws in other states. But over the years, thanks to advocates and including people who do work around drug policies, those laws have been repealed and we're not sending as many people to prison for these nonviolent drug laws. But what we see is that in prisons, there's actually a large number of people who are imprisoned for so-called violent offenses. And I say so-called because prosecutors decide whether to charge somebody with what's seen as a violent offense, even if they actually committed no violence against a person. So in some states, burglary can be considered a violent offense because you enter somebody else's home illegally with the intent to rob them or commit some sort of felony. So you may not have hurt somebody in the process of entering their home, but somebody was in the home and could have been hurt. There are all sorts of laws that charge people as quote unquote violent offenders when they actually did not commit any violence. And then there are people who do harm other people. I don't want to say the majority of people in there do not harm other people, but they're also in prison. So if you let out people who are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses, you're still going to have a gigantic population behind bars. So it only frees up a small share of the prison population. We saw this in Oklahoma a few years ago when they commuted the sentences of a few hundred people convicted of nonviolent drug offenses, and the prison still remained overcrowded. Women in the largest Oklahoma women's prison reported that you could not walk down the hallway without brushing against other people because that is how crowded it was, even after hundreds of people had been commuted and freed from prisons.
So okay, and so if the situation's well, I'm leading to another myth here that if the situation in prison is so bad, why do we not hear more about prisoners resisting or organizing? I know the answer to this, but you tell us.
So prison walls are very good at keeping people in, and they're also very good at keeping information inside. And until recently, many news outlets were not that interested in covering what was happening in prisons unless it was a gigantic riot, a la the 1971 Attica Rebellion, where prisoners took over portions of the prison, held guards hostages, and issued a series of demands for better prison conditions. They weren't saying, give us a plane and fly us to Cuba or something. They were saying, we want to be treated like people, not like animals. And what we see again and again is that it's hard for people in prison to get information out. News outlets aren't very interested in covering it. That's been changing more and more in recent years. But then also some of this resistance is not necessarily headline breaking or, considered newsworthy. So groups of women sitting in the law library helping each other with paperwork around family court to make sure that their children are not, other women's children are not taken from them permanently is not considered a very sexy news story, but it is a form of resistance that happens. What we see instead is that, we see headlines about mass hunger strikes that happen very infrequently, and sometimes people aren't able to get that kind of news out in the first place. So in California in 2011 and 2013, people in the men's Pelican Bay State Prison who were locked into isolation units for 23.5 to 24 hours a day indefinitely with no end to their solitary confinement in sight, launched a mass hunger strike. So the first one was for 3 weeks. The second one followed a few months later. It was also for 3 weeks. The third one in 2013 lasted for 3 months and swept across California so that men and women in other state prisons, even those not in solitary confinement, took place. And that grabbed headlines because it was a mass hunger strike. But 10 people engaging in a hunger strike in a prison in Alabama may not get that same reaction from media, because by the time anybody finds out about this hunger strike, often it's over, or it's hard to get more information about what is happening because people have been sequestered away from phones or anybody who can get this information out. And at the same time, again, especially today in this chaotic news cycle, it's hard to get attention to these kinds of issues. And then there's also, again, this idea that people who are in prison are the worst of the worst, or we should not care about what their conditions are because if you do the crime, you should do the time. And why are you complaining that you're not being fed adequately or you're being locked in a cell the size of a small bathroom for 23 hours a day?
I seem to remember, and I have no ability to keep track of time. I don't know if it was a couple of years ago, there was a strike in I think it was in Alabama. I think,
yes.
And they were attempting to coordinate with other prisons. Mm-hmm. And it was from the outside, from someone who was actually actively looking for information. It was very, very hard to find information. Never mind, I imagine, for them to try and coordinate these things. And it just sort of, melted away because of the complete lack of the ability, I guess, what I'm saying is to sequester anything like that and keep it from actually reaching outside of the prison walls is just enormous, obviously. I mean, the whole thing is a system of control.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about what is this a situation of prisons were just simply a bad idea from the beginning? Or did it go off the rails at one point? Was there a better conception of what these places were supposed to be before we move into what kind of reforms?
So prisons, when they first started, so before we had prisons, people were detained while they were awaiting sentence. And the sentences were brutal. Floggings, being put in the stocks, being executed. So that was terrible. I'm not saying that we should go back to the days of flogging people. But then, so there was this idea that we would imprison people. And the Quakers actually came up with the idea of the penitentiary, where people would sit in isolation and they were supposed to reflect on their sins and pray to God and be penitents. And they were kept in total isolation. They never saw another person. They never heard anything. But instead, many people went mad. And then at the same time, there was another type of prison that evolved called the Auburn State Prison, where people were kept in total isolation for a good part of the day. And then they were allowed to come out and do basically factory work, but they were not allowed to talk to each other. There was no conversation. Everything had to be in total silence. This was enforced by guards and the threat of violence and brutality. And then when they were done making hats or shoes or whatever they were making, they were ushered back into their cells to be totally silent and supposedly reflect upon their sins and pray to God that they did not commit such sins again. So neither of these systems did very much to rehabilitate people. Neither of these systems did anything to address root causes of why people were committing crimes, whether they were poor, whether they had committed adultery, whether they had violated any of the laws and the norms at the times. So we fast forward to the 20th and 21st century. In the 1970s, there was actually a governmental commission that the National Advisory Commission on Criminal Justice Standards found that prisons actually didn't work. And they had only achieved a shocking record of failure. And they recommended that no more prisons be built and that all juvenile facilities be closed. And around that same time, we start to see Nixon ramping up his war on crime, his conflating the civil rights movement, where Black people were demanding their right to equality and equal access to things that had been white only, with crime. So he said, there's this increase in street crime. How can we have this country of law and order where people can decide for themselves what laws they want to obey? And he wasn't talking about, street crime actually that was happening. He was talking about the civil rights movement. So you can see that as a dog whistle. And that started to be the start of increasing policing and in prosecution and imprisonment of Black and brown people throughout the nation. So there's this idea that we put people away and they're supposed to reflect and, repent and be rehabilitated magically when they come out. And what we end up with is this racialized control of populations who are demanding their rights and populations who have never had the same economic, social, or political opportunities as their white peers.
You mentioned the Quakers. Is there something inherently American about this concept of punishment, repentance? I mean, there's obviously a religious element to the underpinning too, and of course the racial element. But I think about more secular countries like Norway or wherever, their concept of prison is a lot different. So can you expand upon that a bit?
Yes. So Norway actually picked up on the Quaker model early on and built these fortress-like prisons as well. And then sometime in the 20th century jettisoned that for what we now call like the Norway model, which is some of their prisons, not all of them, are these more open prisons, which are run more like, I don't know, really nice college campuses, where people have, like rooms to themselves, they have educational opportunities, they have vocational opportunities, they can see their families. But remember, the prison population of Norway is about 4,000. When I was writing the book early on, I went to go see a talk by, I cannot pronounce his name and I will not mangle it, but the director of Norway's prison system was giving a talk about his prison system. And he said that the day before the talk, he had gone to Rikers Island to go tour it. And he was like, this jail, Rikers Island, is a island with 10 jail buildings. And he said, our entire country's prison population can fit into one corner of this gigantic island. So we have to remember that Norway's prison population is 4,000. They don't have things like the death penalty or life sentences. And they treat people as if, and that they are going to be your neighbors and community members and family members. So let us make them be better when they come out. Not let us put them away for X number of years and kind of forget about them, but let us work towards rehabilitating them and making it so that they can reintegrate. But we also have to remember Norway has a very robust social services system that our country does not have. So to answer your question, yes, like the more secular countries have that, but they also have what we don't have, which is a better safety net, so that way, and an understanding that people who are going to prison and in prison are going to be coming out and are going to be living among us again. So it is not to lock them up and throw away the key model that we have. It is so Johan has done something terrible and he's going to go away for 1.5 years. How do we make sure Johan comes back out and is not going to do these things again?
Yeah, well, I mean, and then it just to just build on that, the social safety net aspect also brings it back to how I think Americans view suffering as inherently, repentance and suffering and doing your time and reflecting as, something that's inherently moral. And I think that roots back to Puritanism, but
yes.
That's just something I would add. It's all under the same umbrella, really.
Yes.
Well, so okay, so let's talk about some of the sort of the alternate visions that we could have as a response to crime, and I guess the first question I have is, can we just reform the idea of our carceral state without having greater reform for our society? I mean, do we need a more robust sort of like social system where government is providing for people more before that we can do reform on the carceral state? Or what's the relationship between that?
Well, I think yes. First of all, a short answer, yes. But I mean, earlier we talked about increased criminalization of homelessness and people who are homeless for very petty acts, which if they were inside a home would not be criminalized, right? You can, like when you have a home, you presume your home has a toilet, so you can go to the bathroom in your own bathroom. But when you're homeless, you might be peeing on the street. If you drink alcohol, you might be drinking a beer on the street. Whereas nobody criminalizes you these days for drinking a beer inside your own home. So putting those resources into very necessary supports like affordable housing, why does Austin have such a large homeless population? And why is the response to criminalize rather than to say, let's build some housing so that way we can get people off the street? We saw the same thing in Atlanta in the 1990s when the Olympics were coming up, is that Atlanta built I forget if it was 11-story or 17-story detention center specifically for people who violated city ordinances, mostly homeless people, drinking a beer on the street, walking in the middle of the roadway. If any of your viewers have been to Atlanta and try to walk from one place to another, you will be walking and the sidewalk literally ends. And the next, step you take, you are actually in the middle of the street or the roadway. Now, I have walked in the middle of the roadway many times because I needed to get from point A to point B. Now, no police officer has ever stopped me, warned me, arrested me, ticketed me. But when you are homeless and you are doing this, you are an easy target for these types of things. So have a better public transportation system, have housing, have mental health treatment. Don't wait until people commit criminalized acts to be able to do that, to supposedly provide them with, 3 supposedly hot meals, which many people say they don't actually get when they are incarcerated, and a slab of concrete to sleep on. Actually put that money into these kinds of things, and it would actually be cheaper. I mean, there have been studies that show that it costs between, depending on the state, $31,000 to $55,000, and that cost goes up the older people get, the sicker people get, to imprison them. So it'd be much cheaper to build affordable housing and put them there.
Is that $30,000 to $50,000 annually? Not over the course of their imprisonment. I mean, this is
annually. This is one person per year, and you multiply that by thousands.
I mean, so the big thing for people to get over is this idea that, hey, just to use the Norway model, I don't want to send someone who committed a crime to a sort of like a place that looks like a college campus. It's not a question of efficacy. It's not a question of expenditure. It's not a question of anything other than just sort of this innate feeling that we need to punish that person level. It's not a question of rehabilitation, because obviously that's far more effective. So let's talk a little bit about restorative justice. I mean, how does that work? And do we have examples in practice? I can only tell you that, I had spoken to someone who worked in the family court system in Brooklyn, and they represent people who have been abused. And they told me that, one of the problems with the restorative justice that in some parts of the court system are being used is that the person who's abused doesn't want to get to engage with that abuser again. How do you deal with issues like that? How does what's sort of the rubber meets the road on some of these things?
So restorative justice is this idea that instead of going to the criminal justice system, police, prosecutions, and the hopes of imprisonment and taking that person away from society, it's that there are 2 parties. There's the person who did the harm, what we would call the defendant, or the perpetrator in criminal justice terms, and then the person who was harmed, or the victim, or the survivor. And what restorative justice attempts to do is look at what does the victim or the survivor need in order to be healed, right? So not just they need this person to be away from them, but also what else do you need? Do you need counseling? Do you need trauma-based services? Do you need medical care? Do you need long-term medical care, perhaps? Not just the short-term, your eye was blackened and, or this, your arm was broken, but also what longer-term medical care might you need? What do you need in terms of housing, job support, childcare, family court things, if you have children with this person? And then what does this person need to take responsibility for their actions and try to make amends? And it doesn't always work in a domestic violence situation, because again, there's a long-term pattern of abuse. So before people end up in family court, it's not because the abuse happened one time. It happened multiple times. I mean, we have studies that show that in most abusive relationships, it takes 7 to 10 times when a survivor tries to leave before it actually takes hold. not because they have like some lack of will, but because there are all these other forces that happen. Again, going back to your question about institutional resources, there might be a lack of affordable housing. Where can I go, that I can afford and I can be in a neighborhood that is safe? If there are children, where can I go? I rely on this person to do childcare sometimes, or we split the childcare bill, or that, this person's job is the one that provides the childcare. What do we do about schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of other violent crime that happens, I would point to Common Justice that operates in New York City, which works with youth ages 16 to 24 or 25 who have committed violent acts. And what they do is they go to the criminal courts and they identify people who are facing criminal charges for things like assault, robbery, things that we would typically just be like, you get 5 to 10 years in prison, go away and come back out worse. And first they go to the people who have been harmed and they explain what the program is. And they ask them, would you like to participate? And I spoke to one outreach person who said that what happens is at first the survivor just vents and like all of their anger and their turmoil and their emotion about having been mugged or like assaulted. And it's like, and then at the end of this they say, okay, so if I participate in this means this person will have to be accountable. They have to take responsibility for their actions, and that means that they are much less likely to do this again to me or to somebody else in the future. And 90% of the time they say, okay, let's try this restorative justice model, because we know that this typical going to court, having to testify and hoping that this person gets convicted will actually do something. And we have to remember that even according to the Department of Justice, over half of all violent crimes are not reported in the first place. So restorative justice is a model that's been looked at more in recent years. And I want to be clear that it comes from Native American and Maori communities that have been practicing this for generations, and only recently has kind of taken hold in the United States as a possible model that is not necessarily you take somebody out and you have this adversarial model where the person who did the harm says, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't hit them that hard, it wasn't that bad, they're exaggerating, and never has to take responsibility for their actions, versus somebody who has to say, oh, I did that, and not only did I rob you or punch you or assault you, but now I am the person that causes you to fear to go out at night. I'm the person that causes you to have their heart racing and their, and to be sweating and to be anxious anytime you hear footsteps behind you. These are all the things that I did. It's not just that I did this one single incident, but I've actually caused this, and now I have to hear from your mother and your sister and your, spouse and your children, the effects that my action has had on you. And my family members are like, what did you do? And they're holding me responsible for these actions and saying, what can you do to make sure this never happens again and try to start healing the damage you caused?
Do we have any data? Is there any way to sort of measure? Because I think for a lot of people, the idea that there's an accountability that is sort of intrinsic in someone's person, as opposed to a system imposing accountability on somebody who may not really actually reckon with what they've done, when people are contemplating the idea of rehabilitation, et cetera, et cetera. Do we have, is there any place in the country that has made these reforms sufficiently to sort of assess? Because on some level, the model here is like, we're going to redeploy. It's almost like defund the prisons. We're going to redeploy the tens of thousands of dollars a year that we spend on incarcerating somebody, and we're going to redeploy that money into providing the victim with certain restitution, with certain restorative measures, and perhaps and providing the perpetrator with some type of services to actually genuinely rehabilitate them. Is there a pilot program somewhere, or has this been attempted in a way that we could actually look at some data?
So there's actually been research done in the US, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom that show that restorative justice breaks the cycle of violence and reduces recidivism rates by as much as 44%, which is much better than the traditional prison system where people go in and they come out, and oftentimes they go back in again and they recidivate over and over and over. So the research shows that restorative justice, I think because people are made to take more accountability, and I want to be clear, restorative justice practices are not as quick for either party as the traditional, prison system is. It's not just the victim goes to court and testifies for an hour and then goes home and waits for the verdict and maybe comes back and reads a victim impact statement. It's that they go through a whole process with a set of people who are also saying, what do you need? So it's not just that they're sitting in a circle telling their terrible story over and over, but there's, they're getting, what they need. They can say like, I need help finding, a therapist who understands that I am Black and queer and the victim of violence. Every therapist I found does not understand, what this means for me. Whereas, and they might say, the restorative justice circle might say, okay, let's help you navigate that, versus the traditional, legal system, which might be like, great, you need therapy, but we are not a social services model. So good luck with that.
Victoria Law, the book is Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me on again and for covering these issues.
Thanks, Victoria.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back and wrap up things on our end. What did you want to read in IM that we got during the interview from, his handle is Sam's. We don't need to read that. I love you guys when you have Victoria on. She's right. Prisons and generally the whole system doesn't work. I know because I went through it. I'm a former heroin addict. I got in trouble as a result of my drug use. New Mexico has like 20 prisons and one state-run rehab. So at my sentencing, I was given probation and told I had to wait 10 to 12 months for my bed at the rehab. I was homeless at the time and still addicted, so you can guess how that went. I violated 3 weeks later. I got sent to prison for 3 years. When I got there, I was told I didn't qualify for the drug rehab program in there because I wasn't serving enough time. Prison didn't do S to rehabilitate me. It was getting me extremely lucky. It was me getting extremely lucky to have a parole officer that worked with me, helped with me, and was patient with me. And even with my amazing family support, financial security, and education and job experience, not a lot of felons have. It was still extremely hard to readjust to life. I mean, those type of challenges are insurmountable for people who don't have. Many people who even have the resources. Never mind, don't. So for Emma and I, we'll be back with you tomorrow.
Yes.
And for those of you who are around, we will be back with you right now.
Still with you.
Still with you. Hey, remember everybody, hit the like button and subscribe. Don't forget, you can also support this program by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com is the place where you can go and subscribe. And want to do a shout out to DJ Cold Case, those with K's, in the Discord.
I like that name.
Yeah, who compiled and played 57 versions of the Internationale on May Day, which was 2 days ago, as you remember. The playlist is in the music channel on Discord.
Cool.
So check it out, majoritydiscord.com, majoritydiscord.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And lastly, the AM Quickie, check it out. Things are a little calmer at the AM Quickie, it feels like. We don't have as many, sort of urgent stories, and so we're getting stories that maybe you don't hear of. They get lost in the mix. Some of them maybe you just hear in the context of my headlining here. Get a little deeper, not hugely deep, but enough to give you a little bit of context of it. And you can follow up. So check it out, amquickie.com. If you haven't listened in a while, check it out again. You may enjoy it. All right, we're gonna head into the fun half.
Yes. Also, Left Reckoning for Matt and.
Oh right, yes, thank you.
Yeah, Ben Burgess was on last Thursday. Go check that out and go subscribe. We are about 800 away from 10,000 subs on YouTube, so go subscribe on YouTube, folks.
Whoa. Did things get a little bit heated with Ben?
No, not really, because he doesn't really make the arguments that I don't have patience for in this cancel culture debate. He basically doesn't say it's a threat to the left, not to free speech that we're dealing with here. Basically, we don't want to assume a managerial posture, which is something that I also agree with. So we talked about that.
So super spiciness, a little bit diffused, in other words.
Yeah, although we are a little bit drunk in the post game. So for patrons, patreon.com/leftreckoning. If we do want spiciness or at least slurred speech, you can go to patreon.com.
Did you see the tweet he deleted about you, about being a human container who needs a haircut?
Did Glenn delete that?
No, I'm joking.
Oh yeah. I mean, no, I just mean like.
No, I don't think so.
He stood by the human container tweet.
Well, I mean, I'm a human container. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we're all, in many ways, we're all human
containers. Show off your posture. Hunched over.
You know what I got to do? I got to raise the table. I mean, I don't know what it is. Like I feel.
Or lower the chair.
Well, I would raise the table because if I look at notes in my computer, it's just like not a good look. But yeah, you could lower the chair.
Or we could raise the table. I don't know how
tall are you?
About 6'3".
No.
5'11" and 3/4. Yeah, about 6 foot.
Yeah.
With shoes, I'm 6 feet, without a doubt. I'm towering over 6 feet.
I mean, this is a little high for me.
Yeah, here's the problem.
I'm
okay?
5'9".
And I didn't want to bring this up at the time because it just sounds like you're whining a little bit.
Okay.
But my height is primarily in my torso.
Okay. You're not long-legged?
I am not long-legged. I am actually almost grotesquely short-legged. And so the problem is
You're hunched over torso, by the way.
Well, my torso has to hunch over because look at where my elbows land when I'm just doing casually. They don't even, they're 2 inches off the highest setting on my chair.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
It's because my torso is disproportionate to my legs and my arms.
I mean, I've never noticed that, but thank you for the window into your,
I mean, that's it.
Now I'm not going to be able to look at you the same.
Yeah.
Well, finally, I'll get a little bit of understanding from people as to why.
Michael Phelps. Oh, no, wait. Does he have long legs or does he have a large torso? I forget.
It's pretty much like Sam, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Michael Phelps, the greatest swimmer of all time.
Yeah, see, this is what I have to do to actually...
Do you have long arms?
No, that's the problem.
He's certainly not like Michael Phelps in that area, but, you might need to adjust your
This is the problem I have. Like, I have to do this, and it hurts. It hurts to reach the elbows, and I'm not relaxing. All right. With this said, we're going to head into the fun half. 646-257-39.
Do you like that posture, Glenn?
Well, it's not enough to make it about Glenn. There's other people who echoed it.
All right, well, you're not hunched over there.
646-257-3920. See you in the fun half. It's going to be fun. Actually, this looks pretty good.
Hey, Brendan, I got Danner.
Oh.
Ooh, late break.
In for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Says what?
What?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle.
Come on. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here. I am a total pussy.
All right, we are back. We are. That you know what that sound means, ladies and gentlemen. You know what that sound means. Let's go to a couple of IMs. Germaclean. Getting my first vaccine shot in London tomorrow. Sadly, 12 weeks to the second shot. My butt stays put until then for a new job. 12 weeks for the second shot. What? I don't know what that regime is, because you're supposed to get in this country between Moderna and Pfizer. It's supposed to be 42 days on the outside.
It's a longer wait period in the UK.
With those two shots, or is it a different shot?
I thought it was with those two.
Interesting. Joe Rogan, MD. Has anyone asked Ben Shapiro what it's like to be the last guy who knows it's raining? Unemployed Zoomer. I was so happy to hear the ad for Blowback at the top of the show. Just listen to season 2, episode 4. Great work, Noah and Brender. Poggers. Lee NYC. Very excited. Received my Tushy. Big sale going on in addition to MR discount. Oh, good. Let us know what you think. Darwin Leftist. Hey, Sam, can we please start a trend to find Sam's old comedy bits? It's always a treat when I stumble upon one. I heard a story about a talent show with Louis C.K. that you were part of back in the day. And I actually found it on YouTube. It was called The Filthy Stupid Talent Show. They would bring out comics with their made-up talents, and the Reverend Bob Levy's was Jew wrestling. He'd get on stage and ask if there were any Jews in the audience, and an unassuming young Sam Seder volunteered and proceeded to knock out and pin Bob Levy. Sam, in a fit of adrenaline, grabbed the mic and screamed, "The Jews are the best. The Jews are the best." Bob's punchline was pretty funny too. He said, "Oh yes, if I remember correctly, when Bob Levy got up, he grabbed the mic and he goes, 'That was no Jew.'"
Really?
Yeah.
I would love to hear all about those old times.
There is somewhere. I've seen it on YouTube. It's out there.
Yeah.
It's out there. PH damage. Hello, Vicky. This is from this former ABC No Rio volunteer. Dipshit Grimace. Sam, if you're ever at a bar that serves them, you should try a painkiller. Kind of like a shaken version of a pina colada plus orange juice. The coconut foams up at the top and it's really delicious. Hot, gay, fleshy apparatus. Thanks for the question on sexual violence and justice, Emma. Last week, my neighbor's girlfriend called a domestic on her boyfriend, my neighbor. The cop came and decided to arrest the girlfriend for being hysterical. She was crying and saying, "Stop abusing me," and went so far as to allow the boyfriend to assist her in being cuffed, restraining her, a joke of a system. If you can believe, it is the second time I've witnessed this happen to a woman neighbor where she was abused and arrested instead of the violent partner. In this case, the woman died a few weeks later as a result of the relationship. She was 20 years old. God, horrible.
Jesus Christ. I think, by the way, just quickly, I think I did an interview on how, whenever the Violence Against Women Act, essentially, because it'll involve the police in those disputes, it actually increased the arrests of women who made those calls, because there's a statute that requires the police to make an arrest in general, and it's up to their discretion who they believe when they come.
Ugh.
So that's like part of, it was an interview about how you can't, Biden brags all the time about the Violence Against Women Act, but it was a part of the crime bill in the same framework. It was about criminalizing. And there's been a lot of repercussions to that effect.
Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. So you like pina coladas. Do you also like getting caught in the rain?
It reminds me of Friday when I spoke wistfully about watching the rain.
Well, you know what that joke is, right?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily know that song.
I feel like being
Yeah, exactly. I guess you do.
I've been around too many Jersey Italian dads with boats, I feel like, to not know that song.
That's a yacht rock classic.
Yeah, I mean,
it's what?
Like going down the Jersey
yacht rock.
Family friends.
Yacht rock. What is that?
They're all Italian. They all like Jimmy Buffett. There's lots of.
I don't know if that was Jimmy Buffett. Well, I've never even heard the term yacht rock.
Yacht rock.
They you know that rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby. That's a yacht rock song. I don't know how to define it. Brendan's the muso.
It's like Doobie Brothers, Stephen Bishop, that like soft rock, but like a little like disco inflection in it too.
Yeah.
It's Steely Dan.
Yeah.
Qualifies.
Right. And this is Jimmy Buffett. The Pina Colada song.
Toto.
Toto. I remember that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I sadly this I listened to.
This is your high school dance music, basically.
Actually,
middle school dance music.
Maybe.
Wait, maybe it's not Jimmy Buffett.
No, it's not Jimmy Buffett.
Damn it.
Mrs. Cloudfire. Prison is another great example of American Protestantism. Protestantism. The suffering is the point. It's not about rehabilitation. It's about creating a little slice of hell on earth. Nerd
That's
Cheetah.
A good point.
Some of the talk last week regarding some of the talk last week regarding the Ben Shapiro meltdown over children wearing face masks during a pandemic, and the contrast with his wearing the cap to demonstrate unwavering faith in an invisible, all-knowing skyman. My impression is that the right has embraced posturing but abandoned substance, even scripture, to a large degree. Love to see them called out, not because I'm a true believer, but because I doubt they are. Let me open up the phone lines here. Sorry. Got distracted. You know what? I'm sorry, folks. We failed to start a show. We have a new policy here at the show, where we do this. We've been doing this really since Emma joined the show. Before we start the show, Emma and I say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag that we have here in the office. This is something that we used to do all the time.
Hand on heart, too, because
when everybody was in studio.
Yeah, you don't just stand at attention.
But we're thinking about instituting this during the show. I mean, as the start to the show. And I'm reminded by this because Michael Flynn was down in South Carolina in a rally for Lynn Wood. Lynn Wood, of course, was the lawyer who was saying stop the steal and said, don't go out and vote in Georgia because it's all fraudulent anyways. Here's Michael Flynn. He's pumping up the audience. They're going to say the Pledge of the Allegiance. And, one of the things is it the Pledge of the Allegiance or Pledge of Allegiance? So that's my point. The words sometimes can be really hard to remember.
It's the Pledge of Allegiance, Sam, you commie.
Let's listen.
Listen, I'm going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. You're going to say it along with me. And I want you to hear, not just listen, I want you to hear every single word of the Pledge of Allegiance. That is our pledge to each other. That is our pledge to this country. It's a Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. So put your hand over your heart. Take your hats off there. Take your hats off. That's an order, right? Place your hand over your heart. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, individual, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you.
Did his mic dip out?
His mic dipped out after he
said indivisible way prematurely.
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Boom!
And to the republic and under indivisible.
It was the abbreviated version.
How do you have that kind of wind up?
Yeah, right. And then not get it right? Every word we're going to do.
Every single word enunciated fully is going to happen right about now.
Let's listen to him again.
Listen, I'm going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. You're going to say it along with me. And I want you to hear, not just listen, I want you to hear every single word of the Pledge of Allegiance. That is our pledge to each other. That is our pledge to this country. It's a Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. So put your hand over your heart. Take your hats off there. Take your hats off. That's an order, right? Place your hand over your heart. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, individual, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you.
There's an audio problem. His mic dropped out for a while. You know what's amazing too? Just put up a still of that. Do you see that big Trump badge?
Yeah. I do. I don't know. It looks like a police badge.
Damn. It's like if you're part of Trump's army. I mean,
it'd be nice if they started wearing badges.
Every word, every single word in the correct order coming to your ear holes right now. But first, let me take a sip of this whiskey.
To be fair,
yeah,
he didn't say in the correct order, did he? He just said, I want you to listen to every single word.
Maybe he'd just been listening to the blink. And he thought that was the right.
The blink?
Like the blink of the Pledge of Allegiance.
The blink. Yeah. The pledge. Call from a 509 area code. Who's this? Please cite the Pledge of the Allegiance.
Hey, this is Ronald Reagan.
Oh, don't try and get out of it because you're Ronald Reagan.
You just have to cite it though.
He gets the first line and then he just shouts God.
Well, it's because he said indivisible. He was trying to catch up. It's like it's almost like when you're clapping along and you miss the beat and then you're just like waiting for it to come back around.
And when in doubt, just scream God. Yeah. Right.
I've also seen like rockers during live performances where they're kind of drunk and forgot like the lyrics. They just let the audience take it.
Yeah, hold the microphone out to the crowd. Totally. Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
I'm calling with 2 different hats today. First, as your 2024 campaign manager, I'm going to recommend very strongly against digging up old clips of you and Louis C.K. I think that was a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
We
Okay.
can just leave it there.
All right, fair
You know,
enough.
just saying.
I will take your counsel under advisement.
Second, after your humiliating loss in the race to 1 million YouTube subscribers to David Pakman, I've been doing kind of a deep dive into what's behind that, kind of like when Mitt Romney lost and the Republicans did an autopsy of their party.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Remember that?
I sure do.
Kind of like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But for you.
And they followed none of it, and then Trump won.
Exactly.
Right.
So take with a grain of salt what I'm about to say, but I think this might really help.
I always do.
He's basically saying do the opposite, like the Republicans did after this postmortem.
Well, okay. These have been billable hours, by the way. You'll be getting the invoice.
I don't doubt that at all.
Okay, so David Pakman likes to plug his Instagram. He plugs his Instagram a lot. So if you head over to the Instagram, I think there's 2 vibes that he's giving off that could really help you. And keep in mind, I have a minor in communication, so this,
I know this is coming from an astute place, if that's what you're trying to say.
I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Right. A lot of credentials.
The first vibe. Yeah, the first vibe. Have you ever heard the phrase "sex sells"?
Sex sells. I think that sounds familiar to me. Yeah.
David Pakman's not afraid to show off a little leg. He's got the short shorts from time to time, and just look, I got short shorts on. I've been trying to get you to wear a tank top for Casual Friday, Suns Out, Guns Out, for like 3 years. I even sent you a tank top, and you haven't worn it. Now that's on you, but it's not going to hurt if once in a while. It doesn't have to be on Instagram, just on the regular show.
Right.
Right.
Maybe you don't have a shirt on at all. Whatever. Just.
It might be. I
don't know.
Maybe we have to wait for it to be a little warmer in the studio, probably, until I could justify that. I may have to get tan a little bit.
I don't know why we're trying to copy Pakman. I feel like if sex sells, Sam needs to get on OnlyFans, or I don't know what conversation we're having.
I mean, we might as well go. I agree.
Why can't I wear the short shorts on Instagram? Why do I have to wear a sun?
Because there's legs, but really it's the guns. That's where you gotta to one up. That's the strategy.
People have talked about my calves in the past, and it's not been idle chatter.
You literally just said they were short and
No, my
truncated.
legs are short.
Guys,
yeah.
Why not both? Why not both?
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
So what is your
All right.
now? What's the metric in which I judge
vibe.
whether your advice is successful?
Well, look, all I know is he humiliated you, and there's got to be a reason for it. So these seem after with the minor in communications, having researched this for several months, which will be billed to you shortly. These are my main takeaways. Take it or leave it. The second vibe.
Your main takeaway is that Pakman's sexy.
Exactly. The second vibe that Pakman's giving off on his Instagram, which I think you could benefit from, is he's really leaning into the PMC thing. He's a PMC, and he's not afraid to just let people know it. And you're a PMC, but you've got some of that PMC shame. The vibe that I'm talking about from his Instagram is sort of like, we're in a pandemic, yes, but I'm on the beach, motherfucker, right? And I don't see a reason why you couldn't just...
He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have kids.
Well,
it's not a question of PMC or not PMC. Am I PMC or petty bourgeois? I mean, I think I'm...
I don't know.
I'm...
yeah, you're probably petty bourgeois.
I'm petty bourgeois. I mean,
Well, I mean, I don't know why we can't have some pictures of you drinking a really expensive wine every once in a while on an Instagram somewhere.
I believe me. I have acid reflux, and I am only drinking gin now. So, yeah.
Jeez.
You're so rich, you could probably just dump the wine down the drain after you take the picture.
Actually, that would be great for Instagram, right? I'll get a bottle of Chateau Neuf de Pop.
Open it, sniff it.
Yes.
Snap a pic.
Life is too short to drink even good wine.
Unlike Pac-Man.
And then I pour it down, as opposed to David Pac-Man.
I want to save mine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't. I gotta up my Instagram game, I guess is what you're saying. But you know, our majority report thing is, I don't like doing that. So.
Okay, well,
I would like to go to the beach.
At least dig up that tank top, because it's a really good tank top. I felt like it was.
I'm pretty sure I wear that around. Just not on the show.
Are you looking at it right now? You keep looking up.
I'm looking at it, see if it's hanging in the closet.
What kind of tank top is it?
White tank top, sun's out, guns out.
Oh, so it's not, it's just a standard, as you call it, they say wife beater, which is politically incorrect.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It was horrible.
All right, sorry.
I apologize. One last thing. Do you see Kelly Carey? She's trying to get more people to copy your background on Twitter. Who is? Kelly. Remember Kelly Carey? She used to work for you.
Yeah, she still works for us. She does a little work for us.
This guy, I forget his name, but he has a podcast, and he was asking what he should do for his background, and she sent him a screenshot of your set and said, do this exactly, because he won't hold you accountable.
Well, she should not do that. So.
Well, she learned it from you.
Yep. All right. Well,
all right.
Appreciate the
That's
call.
all.
Thanks.
Yep.
That's great. So, Ronald Reagan. What a great
am
campaign
on,
manager.
David Pac-Man's Instagram now, and he's got salmon shorts with little anchors on them.
Oh,
on the beach.
Nice.
Must be nice.
To have salmon shorts, even.
Real mass hole there.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 570 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yeah.
Hi there. My name is Alex. I'm from the Poconos. About a year ago, I called into the show. I'm the vice president of a school board here, and I more or less just kind of vented my frustrations with, at the time we were just,
COVID.
We had closed.
I remember this, actually.
Yes, you guys made a video of it. By the way, all my buddies loved the show. They watched the show. They were so hyped you guys made that into a video. They couldn't believe it. They're like, damn, Ranky. a lot of fun.
And you're a young guy, right? If I remember correctly?
Yeah, tomorrow's happy early Star Wars Day, but tomorrow is my birthday. I will be turning 24.
Hey.
Whoa, yeah.
Hey.
So remind me, like you were dealing with, we didn't know what to do with COVID at the time. This is May of last year, so schools are closing. We don't know how long this is going to last at that juncture, I think. And so what happened?
Well, and I'm going to tie this in. You had a guest, a couple, and I was so appreciative. They were talking about what the right and what the corporate wing of the party is doing with charter schools. And that factors in heavily to what I'm about to discuss. So basically what we did is we went for a maximum flexibility policy. Now, we worked on our reopening plan all throughout summer, and it came for a vote, and I just said straight up, the option we're giving parents is come back into school or not at all. And that just doesn't work, right? Because some people, they wanted, the hybrid experience. Some wanted full remote. Some wanted to go off into charters. Like, we needed a way to, stem the tide. So, and it was, if you'll pardon the French, it was a bitch and a half to administer. But we offered an option for 2-day in school and then 3 days out. Those other 3 days being remote, and it was asynchronous. So we had these different pods. It was based off of last name. And then we also had an option to go into a charter academy. You're still a student, the advantage of which you're still a student. You can still participate in extracurriculars. And then we had a full remote option, which is, if you're the teacher and I pick the full remote option, you would be teaching me while you're also teaching in-person kids or people who signed up to be in person.
And how would you do that latter version 5 days a week if you had only 2 days a week for the hybrid?
Pardon?
Well, I mean, if I'm doing 5 days a week remote, right, and the teacher and I'm like simultaneously being sort of beamed into class as the teacher's teaching class, what class is that teacher teaching 5 days a week in school?
Well, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Therein lies the problem. It's very difficult. We put an enormous amount of pressure and workload on teachers. They would be teaching so the class is always synced up, right? If you're in the hybrid lane, or if you're in the full remote lane, you're still learning at the same pace Monday through Friday. It's just the method in which you're receiving it. But you would still, quote unquote, go through your schedule like a normal day, be it physically, part remote, or just full remote.
Okay. And
Wednesdays were our days off, not our days off, but that was a time to do what we call the deep clean day. This is before, the thing about it,
right,
again, because the science was so wacky. We talked about this, but, our Wednesdays was the deep clean, sanitize every desk, sanitize every chair,
So school week was 4 days a week, and there would be two cohorts of essentially people going to school. I go to school on Monday, Thursday, and I go to school Tuesday, Friday. And teachers are in school teaching those 4 days. And if I'm remote, I'm doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And the teacher's teaching two different sets of kids over that, but I'm watching them remote.
Correct.
How did it work out?
So a couple of things. And again, like this ties in a lot of like local issues, but then also what I referenced with charter schools. So the idea behind this was to offer as much flexibility as possible. And like I said, it's really tough to administer. So what we're moving to, and again, the science has become much more clear. Like they've reduced, for example, the American Pediatric Association has reduced the social distancing requirements, and then later to the CDC down to 3 feet. I was always kind of uncomfortable with that, but it's, I'm not going to be a wackadoo that flips the bird to the scientists, you know what I mean? If they're telling me it's okay, it's okay. So, we've always kept modifying it, and what we're planning for and now it's not finalized, don't want to get ahead of my skis here, but we're moving all of if you want to stay remote for this upcoming year, you basically have to pick our charter school option. Now, this is a charter academy that's run by our district. It's not, it basically keeps the taxpayer's dollar in the school district. Now, there are two big lobbying groups in Pennsylvania, fracking and the charter school industry. Pennsylvania has one of the most insane charter laws in the country. We have to either match or completely cover every single dollar in tuition payment for any type of charter or semi-private school, everything but basically parochial, religious. And so we have seen, for example, in the years leading up to COVID, pre-COVID, we are paying about $2 million in what we call special education charter. Now, I'm totally fine with that. Like, I'm not completely opposed to all types of charter. Some of these schools do provide specialized education for people with different needs. We were paying about $2 million. $2 million I would be happy to pay. But our just regular charter school costs were like maybe in the $1 million range. Not that's not an insignificant amount of money, but manageable. That has, Sam, Emma, that has since bloomed to $9 million of I don't know if your listeners know much about the Poconos, but it's not exactly a mecca, okay?
Right.
And we have a total budget of about, I don't have it in front of me, $123 million.
Wow.
For this year, and so that's a huge chunk of money. And we have negotiations coming up for a support and teachers union, pro-union. I want them to be paid well, but I also have to manage, just basic financial, due diligence. So, and if I could backtrack a little, there's this group that was an offshoot of the Trump presidential campaign, Pennsylvania presidential campaign. I'm not quite sure if they were statewide or if they're just hyper local, but they styled themselves as press. And early on, they were formed as this like nut job reactionary group to pressure us into removing as many restrictions. I mean, we're talking mask stuff, we're talking distancing stuff, we're talking about, again, before the science was clear on this, having, locker room or like lifting sessions and stuff like that. And at the time, we didn't know if it was even possible to do any of this stuff with the resources available.
All right, so Alex,
as time progressed, go ahead.
Well, all right. So where are we at here? So they've been draining money into this charter thing. You've decided to make the charter is the only fully remote option for next year. And I mean, are there going to be a lot of people who are going to take that option?
Well, and that's what we're trying to figure out, because all of the unknown is how many kids are going to come back from charters. We're hoping a lot. How many kids are going to stay in, our new remote option or our new charter, and how many are going to go into, we're inching closer to a 5-day week again. We're not sure if we're going to be able to pull it off, but that's what we're hoping to build towards. So we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And everything's still up in the air, and it's a hell of a thing to plan,
Wow. That sounds like an unbelievable challenge, but appreciate the update, Alex. That's that sounds like an unbelievable challenge. I appreciate it.
If I could plug myself, I'm running for re-election. I'm the only incumbent in the race. The primary comes up here the 18th of May. So if you guys in the community wish me luck, I need it.
Good luck with it.
Wait, what's your last name?
Oh, Reinke. REINCKE. Alex Reinke, at Alex Reinke. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and all that.
All right, appreciate the call.
Thanck you. Have a good one, guys.
Somebody make a mental note when that guy becomes governor of the state.
Alex REINCKE.
He's turning 23 tomorrow, do you say, or 24?
24.
Does it really make a difference?
Yeah, either way, I was not that on top of it.
Makes a difference to him.
I guess. But I'm saying from
what birthday did he say it was?
24.
No, I know, but he called it something.
May the 4th.
Oh, May the 4th.
May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
Right, that's tomorrow. I'm glad I didn't see a ton of those dumb Justin Timberlake memes on May the 1st, though. We're finally over that.
Calling from a 513 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Phil with a PH from Ohio.
Phil with a PH from Ohio. What's on your mind, Phil? PH?
Well, I was thinking the other day just how much bad history there are between civilians and police in this country. And the only solution possibly would just be to rehire all the police in this country, just start all the way over.
Well, I mean, I think you could rehire all the police, I guess, but I think really what you need to do is actually just start to trim the police forces.
Well, I'm pro defunding the police. I think the budgets are way too big, and most police departments are, way over militarized. I just think a clean slate would kind of give an opportunity to, do a few things. You'd be able to separate departments, like traffic cops responding to traffic problems with that type of training, or social workers responding to domestic disputes, or people with mental, problems, so they have that proper training. And it would help end a lot of, some of these entrenched problems, such as the insider relationships between police and people who investigate police not wanting to,
But do you think that those relationships are, do you think that the problems are just like personal relationships, or do you think they're more structural?
I think a lot of it is structural, but I think if you, were able to, like I said, just kind of start over one for one with rehiring, the whole,
well, let me put it this way.
Be able to restructure the system.
Let me put it this way. If I had to choose by putting all new people back into the police forces, or simply like saying, hey, guess what? No more traffic stops. We're not doing that anymore. Just no more traffic stops. You can ticket, you can sit in your car, you can say moving violation, but the discretion and the moments where the cops walk up to the windows, there's just no value in it. There's no value in it. There's no added value to them actually interacting there, but we know all the downsides of it. So I would just that would be one of the first things I do. And then you don't have police go, you don't ticket people for being, homeless. You send social workers out there to actually deal with the problem. You need to make these big cuts. And then it really, it's less relevant who's on the police force at that point, it seems to me. Because I
just figured that then you'd just be able to start the training from square one, whether, it's
but it's not a question of
or
training, I don't think. At the end of the day, I think, I'm not saying that you wouldn't get any value out of that, but at the end of the day, it's like you just don't put people in that situation. And that way you don't have to worry about all these other things that would not work. Like, I don't know, you're recruiting, all these people who want to join the police force, you're going to get very similar types of people. It's just going to be different people. And you're going to have the same trainers there, and you're going to have the same type of training reforms. At the end of the day, you just need to make these portfolios, you need to shrink them dramatically and put the money into services that are going to prevent, the problems that are going to sort of inhibit the growth of the problems that you have a problem with in society. Appreciate the call.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's, I don't know if I want to hear Chris Coons justify.
Oh, man.
We do? Let's do this. Okay.
Well, the prospect of listening to Chris Coons was a bit daunting, but I'm down to discuss it.
Well, I want to talk about this. There was two segments. Well, one segment is Stephanie Ruhle, and then this tweet that she put out. They did put out this tweet chain. Thread. A chain. Old man. Stephanie Ruhle, she deleted this, but pop this up, Brendan.
Stephanie Ruhle, MSNBC host.
MSNBC host.
Yes.
She wrote, it's unpopular, especially on Twitter, to say there are risks in Democrats going too big. The White House spent a few days clarifying who exactly would see their taxes go up, and now's here what we know. And this thread was much longer, but she deleted it. A couple earning $500,000 will have taxes raised. Now, my understanding is $550,000, and for her, she would say, why would you quibble? But I think $50,000 is actually the median income of households in this country. So $50,000 is a lot of money.
Yes. And just to be clear about the $500,000 per household, right? The 99th percentile of a household makes $531K. So,
okay. So, yeah, let's assume it's going to be 531. I think it's like something like 5. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
The 1% of households.
I'm not disputing that's a lot of money, but especially in high tax blue states, those folks definitively do not consider themselves rich. And even if it's a lot richer than the poor, those voters don't see it that way. Okay.
Well, a lot of those people listen to you, so maybe that says something about your programming.
Let's just stipulate that, okay, that's the case, that these folks are not educated as to where they are in the financial spectrum of things. Again, if you are a household that makes over $500,000, you are in the top 1%. Now, it may be the case in some of these wealthy blue states, or maybe New York City, I guess. I don't know. You may not feel rich, but then you need to make a determination.
I don't really care how people feel.
Well, I mean, like, okay, I'm just going to grant that for the sake. Now, the thing is, we don't have the rest of her tweets. I'm just doing this from memory, but she basically said she doesn't like, she sort of distanced herself from the idea as she went on because she was like, I think this might be a problem. She ended up deleting the tweets.
Yeah, so that's the ultimate distance.
And this isn't about Stephanie Ruhle.
Yeah.
Just want to make this clear. I mean, it's up to you, your assessment of Stephanie Ruhle. But so she said, like, this idea that, and they're paying $50,000 for kids in college, for one kid in college, and they're paying high taxes. And they may not be excited about this pre-K, universal pre-K thing, and blah, 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 because apparently, their kids are older or whatever. Here's what's there's two ways of assessing this. One is that she's actually like just expressing an opinion that I'm in a bubble, and so I only have a sense of like what really wealthy people feel, and we have to worry about their feelings, and we don't want to tax them because I'm completely out of touch with what the average, the media, whatever you want to call it, or even people like in the top 90,
average.
top 90%, top 85%, top, whatever it is. I'm just expressing sympathy for them. She tried to sort of distance herself from that. Or she, as the host of a cable television show, is making an electoral assessment.
Right.
About, hey, if you piss these people off, that's going to hurt you in the midterms. She said the midterms. This is nuts because you are talking about, if you're going to talk about high tax blue states, you're talking about Pennsylvania, you're talking about New Jersey, you're talking about New York State.
Not
Those
even
are the big
Pennsylvania.
ones.
I mean,
maybe Pennsylvania.
we looked this. I mean, I just wanted to put this out there because I looked it up. Right, wealthiest districts in the country as of 2018 probably didn't change much. They're all in Virginia, California, New Jersey, New York, and one in Maryland. They're all represented by Democrats, every single one, and a lot of them are D plus 6, D plus 23, D plus 24, D plus 15, D plus 1, even, D plus 3.
So there may be a couple of
21,
seats.
D plus 14, D plus 19.
There may be a couple of seats that are tighter and could be arguably swing districts. But if you're talking about 0.1%, and then a smaller subset of people who are voting Democratic as opposed to Republican there, and then are going to change their vote because of an increase in taxes, they're going to hit them maybe after 2022. Versus the rest of the people in that district who might decide like, hey, wait a second, Joe Biden just got me universal pre-K. I've just saved a bunch of money. So it's got to be people who are over a certain age and their propensity to vote Democratic, presumably they've done that the whole time or something. I mean, statistically speaking, this is a weak ass argument, and you got to come out with some type of data to support this. Otherwise, it just sounds like you are pushing the don't raise taxes on a $550,000 couple line. And you're just doing so because, I mean, I don't even think she's conscious of it. I mean, because if she was conscious of it, she wouldn't have ever tweeted that. And she wouldn't have had to delete her tweet. But here's another problem. Like she follows up on this today. Puts on Josh Gottheimer. He is in one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one of the. He's not in one of those, but she had Swazi on, who represents one of those 10 wealthiest districts in the country, which is New York 13. He represents a district on Long Island. Gottheimer, though, represents a wealthy district in northern Jersey, NJ5, that had been represented by a Republican in the past, but he now has won re-election at least twice.
So that's arguably, purplish. I mean, in that instance.
But Swazi's district is +3 Dem.
And so, that's arguably like, a little bit of shade of purple. But watch this clip about the SALT tax. Here's the thing. The SALT deduction tax. Here's the thing. If you're going to, you're either doing one of two things here with this. You're basically amplifying a message to Joe Biden and trying to forestall the passage of the infrastructure bill or make sure that this SALT tax deduction cap is lifted, or you're trying to inform your viewers about the SALT tax deduction.
Which primarily affects wealthy households.
Well, you would tell people, not even primarily. Watch this.
Okay.
Administration. This morning, the Biden administration says it will negotiate, at least on the infrastructure bill. But this is complicated, even among Democrats, because different states have different priorities. The latest census showed more people are leaving high-tax states for low-tax states. And it's not just individuals. These same states are considered business unfriendly, and they're losing businesses and the taxes that go with them. And while lawmakers in those states are very excited about...
With all due respect to Market Watch and Business Week and Forbes, okay, there may not be a connection, such a close connection between people leaving New York and going to other states because of the high taxes, or at the very least that the wealthy, because we're talking about wealthy people leaving to go to these states because of the taxes. As much as it could be they're retiring and they want to go live somewhere it's sunny, or maybe people want to live where it's sunny.
You're telling me that people on Park Avenue are not in mass migrating to Missouri?
No, I don't. I tend to doubt it, but continue here. So we're we don't know if there's a connection, but go ahead.
About Biden's agenda, they're also worried about how we pay for it. They're urging the administration not to raise taxes on families and instead pay for his proposal by closing tax loopholes and going after all of those tax cheats who don't pay what they should, including the tax gap. That is the $1 trillion a year difference between taxes legally owed and taxes actually paid. I want to bring in two of those lawmakers, members of the newly formed SALT caucus, New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer and New York Congressman Tom Suozzi. Congressman Gottheimer, explain the SALT caucus. Why should people care?
Well, there's 33 of us in states like mine and Tom's that unfortunately, after the 2017 tax hike bill hit us and they really capped out that SALT deduction to $10,000, on average here in Jersey, families of mine in this district, their taxes went up, not down. And I'm not just talking about the well-to-do. I'm talking about hardworking middle-class families. A cop and a teacher, Stephanie, would pay about $17,000 on average in total local and state taxes in Jersey. So their taxes actually went up. All we're fighting for here is making sure we get a tax relief by reinstating the state and local tax deduction, which is key. A third of people in New Jersey residents would get tax relief, and a huge swath of them are actually, 80% of them, make less than $216,000, Stephanie. So this is critical to families here and their affordability.
Pause it. Oh, what a pause. What a pause.
First off, here's the tip. If you're hosting a show and you're asking a question of a politician or anybody else, and they say 80% of the people affected by this make $216,000 or less.
Specific.
You should go like 216. What? Why'd you use that number? I don't know the answer to this because I didn't have Gottheimer on my show. I would probably never have him on my show. Although maybe I would have him on just asking that question. Why'd you use that number?
You love to argue.
I do like to argue.
So
here is a simple fact that did not come up on this conversation. Put up the well-known crazy radicals over at the Brookings Institute. Put up that page. The people who would benefit, scroll down now, the people who would benefit from lifting the SALT cap tax, the top percent, and we roll your cursor over that. 57% of the people who would benefit from the raising of the SALT cap are in the top 1%. 57%.
How about that other big green?
The other, more darker green, is the 80th to 99th percentile. That's 40%.
So 57 plus 40. 87.
Try again.
No, 97.
That's right.
Sorry. Jesus Christ, Emma.
97%. 7% of the benefit of lifting the cap goes to people in the top 12 percentile of wealth. If you really are concerned about those firefighters and the teachers, then what you do is you say, we're going to lift the cap for a limited number of people. Instead of $10,000 deduction, whatever it is, we're going to make it, well, you want the average? I have a feeling, and they put up those averages on that graphic, you take it to 17,000 or whatever it is, because what they're doing is they're averaging in these multi-millionaires who are paying, taxes, state taxes that are enormous because they're making a ton of money. And they're averaging that in with, the other 3% who are not making a ton of money, but maybe just hit some threshold. This is all just incredibly disingenuous. And it is just she is a machine that just pumps out these talking points. She complained about Joe Biden rhetorically on the campaign trail, saying this campaign's about Main Street, not Park Avenue. And she complained that she had some friends who lived on Park Avenue. They were upset. I think we talked about in the past when she had Bernie Sanders on and just sort of sandbagged him when he had the audacity to go out and go like, calling for $2,000 checks. How in the world could that ever happen? Ultimately, it was Bernie Sanders calling for $2,000 checks that basically provided the Democrats the ability to say, we're not listening to Donald Trump when he suggested it. We had suggested, the Democrats already suggested that. We're just, now that Donald Trump agrees. And that's how we ended up getting the $1,400 checks, followed the $600, et cetera, et cetera. We know the issues with that. But my point being, the active pursuit of trying to sort of push these moneyed interests there is just stunning.
Well, it's incredibly specific to wealthy New York, New Jersey suburb areas. Say if you're in a suburb of DC in one of those Virginia or Maryland districts that I listed there, it's super applicable to that class, but it's presented, especially by Gottheimer and Suozzi there, as if it's not. And I, obviously I probably wouldn't have Gottheimer on either because I know that presentation is going to be disingenuous, but it seems to be, at least on his end, purposeful.
Yeah, well, it's also, I'm sorry, you can't you have these people on and you don't present the idea, the actual idea of who's impacted by these taxes. I mean, honestly, it's unbelievable.
Rule's presentation has always been interesting to me because she kind of dresses these concerns up as like some sort of like representation thing, and that representation should be egalitarian and equal amongst everyone. Like all these voices should be elevated like they aren't already the driving factor of policy and everything on how this country functions. It's very interesting for me to see her do representation for rich people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a common thing you see. Like, let's make sure all voices are heard. Let's be like when someone says, I'm going to be a mayor for all New Yorkers, they're signaling to the rich that they'll have their usual table, basically.
Yeah, that is nuts. I mean, I just can't. It's just.
And just back to your electoral, like, there is zero electoral repercussions.
I mean, that seems a very, and look,
it's a huge, I mean, if that's the initial argument, we can have a debate on those
that's
merits.
For the 400 or 500. Yeah.
And we'd win on those merits based on the numbers that I pulled up earlier.
And this idea of like, if you're going to have people on to justify why they would kill the infrastructure bill, you need to have somebody on there going like, when they kill the infrastructure bill, we're going to remind people that they were doing this in service of the top 1%.
We didn't even, I don't even know if we got to the part where Gottheimer and Suozzi say that they are not going to vote for the infrastructure bill unless. So this is an active choice to elevate an argument that could, in my view, not be well received if people were arguing on its merits, that could potentially kill the infrastructure bill.
Right. And, where's somebody else to be brought on in that segment?
Fine, have Gottheimer on, then have Rashida Tlaib on.
Have them on at the same time. I think you could also have somebody on who goes, you know what? We have 30 retirements in the House or something like that, or 15 retirements so far. People are going to run for something else. They're going to retire. We're going to lose the House. Between the redistricting, we may lose the House anyways.
And on average, say we're deciding between an infrastructure bill, universal pre-K childcare.
What's going to help?
Districts that are trend Democratic at the very least, and a small amount of people in that district who would be affected by a SALT deduction. Which is the one we're going to prioritize here?
And
from a party perspective.
Which one could have more electoral salience?
Exactly, but that's the point, right? Thinking purely from a self-preservation standpoint, which is seemingly the only thing that can get through the leadership.
It's hard to justify the difference of $7,000 to your constituents, only a third of which will see an impact of that versus, widespread infrastructure reform and changes.
All right, let's play this clip. This is pretty funny. Kelly Loeffler. She's still out there. You remember her? She was the appointed senator from Georgia. She lost.
She looks like a ghost and just behaves.
Didn't they
like
just there was a rebellion with her WNBA team?
They're like, we're not going to play for.
So she had to sell that, right?
Yeah, well.
Here she is with Neil Cavuto. When you've lost Neil Cavuto, you've got a problem. Neil Cavuto, Fox. Is he on Fox Business News?
Fox Maine. News. There you go. Cavuto Live.
Making sure that everyone's voice is heard.
All right. So if we were having an investigation into that, it would be investigations after other investigations. This one more focused, I guess.
Set this up. Loeffler wants an investigation into Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of State in Georgia, because she's still trying to, she's going to run for something again, I guess, and she needs to play up to the.
What else is she going to talk about?
She needs to play up to the Trumpistas. So let's hear Cavuto ask her now. Go back a little bit.
Making sure that everyone's voice is heard.
All right. So if we were having an investigation into that, it would be investigations after other investigations. This one more focused, I guess, on the behavior of Mr. Raffensperger. But you had charged that you want to probe into whether he used his office to advance his political interest. He was supporting you and your colleague. So how was that opposite what your interests were? You were both on the same page.
That's not exactly correct. Look, he's our top elections official. He's not a partisan official per se. But my focus is not sweeping this.
But he wasn't for your opponent, right, Senator? He was for you. He was for Senator Perdue. What would be in his interest to sabotage that?
Not suggesting sabotage. I'm suggesting that Georgians don't trust voting right now, and he took actions that led to a lack of confidence.
Because of you. People like you.
I never contemplated what if someone asked me, but he supported you, and if he did something that undermined the election, why did you lose?
Well, that was before Hugo Chavez got to him.
I forgot about that. There you go. That's what happened. We get time for one final call. Call from an 818 area code. Maybe we have one more time for one more. Call from 818 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 818.
Wow. Choking.
Back in line. Let's see. Call from an 817 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh my goodness. Am I on?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Hello. This is Shane from Texas.
Shane from Texas. What's on your mind, Shane?
Well, I was calling in to talk about your guest today and what they were talking about.
All right.
Sorry, I'm just...
You're doing good, Shane. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's a well-taken point that ending the drug war would not end the system by mass incarceration. And I'm not nearly as educated as she is on this topic, but however, I do believe it would do more than your guest thinks it would.
All right, do tell.
Well, one, because nonviolent drug offenders serve much less time than violent offenders, meaning even though nonviolent drug offenders only represent about 15% of the prison population, this is only a snapshot of the problem. Because in the time one violent offender is serving their sentence, 2 to 3 nonviolent drug offenders could have served their sentences. And 2, how many of these violent offenders previously served time as a nonviolent drug offender, which directed them towards this path? And 3, the money wasted in the drug war could potentially have gone to alleviating the underlying conditions which led to violent crime happening.
I think that point, I just want to be clear on your point there. And I trust your numbers on this because they sound like they would be this. But I stand
for state prisons from 2016.
Okay. So just to be clear, your argument is that while at any given time,
any given point.
At any given point, folks in prison for drug offenses may be no more than 20% of the prison population. That, in restaurant terms, that table turns over 3 times for the, over the course of the evening versus, that 4-top that's been there all night. And so the number of people from a percentage standpoint at any given time, the number of people who actually cycle through prisons relative to the whole is much higher than 20%. So
yes, exactly.
Okay. And so the number of people who actually go through prisons would be, close to 3 times or have a much, I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's conceivable that the number of people who go through prison at any given point, the percentage could be, over the course of, let's say, a 20-year, 30-year period, could be closer to 40, 50, 60%, maybe more.
Yeah, and the number gets even bigger if you're only looking at, say, possession as opposed to trafficking.
Interesting. And your argument is that touch with prison ends up basically putting you on which is her argument too. Every time you go into prison, you're basically just giving vocational training for people to end up committing more crimes. That's a very fair point. And I maybe we'll ask her.
I wish I could have asked her directly because I don't really have the resources or time to actually research this adequately.
Well, and you know what? I would also suggest, you could reach out to her on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a great question. And I wish I had understood those figures beforehand because that would have been a good question to ask her. Because I think it really, I think that there are other reasons that go beyond that narrowly tailored argument about to get rid of of prisons and the carceral state in that respect, but
or just changing our attitudes towards prisons and
without a doubt. But as a that's as a first step reform in terms of we're just going to instead there is no drug offense that you could have. Maybe trafficking's different because that's more of a commercial thing, but just start with there is no drug possession offense that you could have that would land you in prison, that it would necessarily land you in treatment or counseling or something like that would be a big doozy of a first reform step. Let's put it that way.
I'm not quite sure what that last point was. Could you?
Well, my point being that like, look, you could make that first. You could make by saying only 20% of the prison population is in there for drug offenses, minimizes how big of a reform it would be to basically say we don't imprison people for drug use.
Well, you could say that, but another angle on it could be that the public would be much more willing to change our attitudes in prisons towards nonviolent drug offenders, as opposed to people would like to go harder on violent offenders. So it would be more public appeal for only ending the drug war, as opposed to like larger reformations, which I do think need to happen.
All right. Well, great point. Appreciate the call, man.
Okay. Thank you. Love the show.
All right. Thanks, Beck. All right. We'll take one more phone call. Let's try that 818 again. 818. 818.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Dave from Jamaica, can you hear me?
A little hard to hear you.
You sound a little garbled. Who's this?
Dave.
It's Dave?
Fine. I'll try one more time. Am I too garbled?
Yeah, you're underwater, Dave.
Dave, I'm sorry, man.
Your phone's always so clear, but last two calls can't hear you.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, you're going to have to drop me.
Okay, sorry. Dave calling from outer space. All right, final phone call of the day. Calling from a 412 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Luke calling from Pittsburgh.
Luke from Pittsburgh. You are the final caller of the day.
Wow.
That's amazing. I've been listening to the show for years. Actually, I was president of my campus Libertarians, actually. And it was this show and Mike and everybody who kind of showed me the fault in my ways. I'm actually finishing law school here in a couple weeks. I'm a big advocate, actually, for prosecutorial reform and everything. And I'm a member of my local DSA and everything. So.
Oh, sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So this show's been really formative in kind of reshaping the way I see the world. So I just wanted to start out by throwing that out there. So I do just have two quick things to say for the fun half. James O'Keefe just put out a music video about an hour ago. You need to see.
Yeah, all right. We will have that. We will feature that tomorrow.
Yes. It's on the Project Veritas main page. Also, I watch the Glenn Beck program. I hate watch it.
Right.
Bill O'Reilly is Glenn Beck's Dennis Miller now.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's as awful as it sounds. And they actually had a segment. Glenn Beck's audience is crumbling right now because he was real big on the Joe Biden mental decline conspiracy theory. And he had Bill O'Reilly on to talk about how Biden's big speech the other day was actually him saying that he wants to become a dictator and install a communist Chinese-style government in America. And Bill O'Reilly said he spent the whole segment just saying, but he's in mental decline. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so now his audience, every time Glenn Beck tries to make a conspiracy theory up, just says, I thought he's in mental decline. Why are you covering for him? And they're accusing him of being a plant for the left.
Wait, so his
trying
audience
to cover up mental decline.
His audience now thinks that Beck is actually a plant for the left because he's trying to cover up the mental decline narrative.
They're saying that QAnon tells them that Joe Biden's in mental decline, and that Glenn Beck is trying to cover it up now.
Where is Q even like posting now?
Well, wait a second. Is there a way that we can actually like somehow transmute what you've just told me into something that I could bathe in every morning? That is just so effing awesome. Like, I love the fact that like that was the problem, right? With like, you know, sort of like just they had that problem during the run up to the elections. Like, he has no energy, he's low energy, he's falling apart, and he beat our taking over everything.
Right.
Yeah, it sucks to paint a guy as low energy and then he beats your guy.
Right.
Well, it couldn't have been. It was illegal.
Wow, that's awesome. Well,
the whole clip is on his YouTube channel.
All right,
So,
we will look.
It's worth a watch.
Let's get that. If you send us a link to that, I mean, we should set up some type of thing, like, because I hate to ask people to spend their time watching this stuff, but I do feel like, you know, if they sent us clips, maybe we got to figure out some type of like swag reward system.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, this is good penance for serving as a former libertarian, you know, chapter president. So, you know, you're officially absolved of that. Anybody else help produce the fun half? If you're a former libertarian, you get that removed from your record.
That's right. You're not totally expunged, but you're pretty close.
What should I put in my search bar to look up this glorious video?
Just James O'Keefe Presents. I found it. We'll have it for tomorrow.
We're talking about the Glenn Beck one.
Oh.
I just went on. I just searched his show. I searched the Blaze Network, I think, and it was on there, or it might be on his personal page. It's on one of the two.
Gotcha.
Well,
it's like a 7-minute video. It's a big picture of like you know, Bill O'Reilly looking constipated. So.
Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly debate. Does Joe Biden even know what he's saying?
Oh God, I love that.
Yeah, that's the one.
I got it.
The comment section is just amazing.
We're gonna do that tomorrow. What's your name?
Luke from Pittsburgh.
Luke from Pittsburgh. Thank you. You have made my day. Both the story about your being a former libertarian, and that you've joined the DSA, and of course all of the. Just even the words, like I knew this was going to go the right way when you said that Bill O'Reilly is Glenn Beck's new Dennis Miller. That to me was all I needed to hear.
Beautiful.
Luke, thank you so much.
No problem, guys.
All right, bye-bye. All right, folks, that is
what a better way to end the show, right?
What it couldn't be better. I'm sorry we had a bunch of people hanging on for over a long time. All right, so let's read some IMs, and then we'll get out of here. Follow up with a caller talking about drug. Well, let me do it. I'll just do this. Bearded cripple, drug offenses, and other guests you had on the other week about legalization of drugs. Law enforcement infrastructure could be reduced as would not be necessary. The impact on courts turn towards a rehabilitation society rather than a retribution society. John, I love when you guys have, I read that already. Alpha Helix is back. I live in Austin, and the attitudes of the Yes on Prop B crowd are disturbing. So much fear-mongering about how dangerous the encampments are, but in my opinion, that's mostly people inventing scary narratives in their heads because of prejudice against homeless and poor people. One of the Yes propaganda videos had someone filming a homeless person, and the homeless person got mad and said, "Hey, I'll rip off your dick." They were touting this interaction as a prime example of threats of violence and making streets unsafe. But in the video, it's clearly a mild street conflict. What annoys me most of the arguments for yes, our streets are unsafe. Well, put them in public housing and boom, problem solved. Indeed. I mean, look, you know, I agree. Adil, good news from Kerala, India. Communists won a big win in the state elections. Modi BJP couldn't win a single seat in the 140-seat state legislature. Good to hear. I don't know the context of that state, but
Kerala is like famously communist. I don't know the history myself as well as I should, but also, I mean, Modi, the COVID disaster is really sinking him.
MIDI Doctors. Hey, Sam, remind everyone to hit the like button and subscribe, Poggers. James in Jersey City, the guy who murdered my cousin while out on parole could have used a longer prison sentence. Or maybe, that guy could have used some type of intervention that would have prevented him from killing your cousin. Left of the box. I mean, I don't mean to be insensitive about that, and I understand, like, from the perspective, from that perspective, the answer is, lock him up, throw away the key. But maybe if the 30 or 90 or 60 or hundreds of thousands of dollars that were expended upon putting that guy in prison in the first place could have been expended upon some type of other intervention, maybe your cousin would still be alive. Left of the box. Every Canadian listening needs to Google Bill C-10. The government's trying to expand the CBA to all social media platforms after removing the exemption for individuals who upload content to them. This will mean any content uploaded will be subject to CRTC regulations, and the government will have to have the ability to order anything they find objectionably removed. Video about it at Left of the Box. You guys are great. We'll check it out. I don't know what CBA or CRTC stands for. Judy Ruliani. Mostly torso over here. My dad was 6'3", my mom was 5'4". Got mom's legs and dad's torso. Damien. On my way back to get my vaccine, finally wearing my left is best shirt and listening to Sam describe his Lovecraftian corporeal form. Just got my first shot, and in my left is best shirt, and the cute girl checked me in, said, I like your shirt. All right, great, congrats. Ryan Cole, nothing against Michael Phelps, Brendan, but my Uncle Peter is the greatest swimmer of all time. He might not have broken records Michael did. He set a few in the 50s, though, but he is a legendary big wave surfer, environmentalist, and extraordinary human being. Well, there you go. Cool. Teamster from Chicago. What did you guys take out of the intro? I didn't notice any difference. We just took out like something that says what. But we didn't take all of them. Shelby from Phoenix. I don't know if you're going to cover the psychotic Kansas substitute teacher who's also a state representative who assaulted a student, gave a lecture on procreation, and a bunch of other weird shit. It's an insane story. Yeah, I got to check that out. I saw some of the video. It looked nuts. All right. 3 more. Comrade Cat went on Tushy.com to order one of the bidets I heard so much about. After extensively investigating site multiple times, I've concluded it isn't the correct website to get a bidet. Oh, Tushy. It's Hello Tushy.
There you go.
Oy, 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 oy,
man.
All right. Rabbit from Boston. Hey, Sam, I'm Mark Crew. I really enjoyed the bit last Friday about the cringy Daily Wire video. I found it interesting that Candace Owen mentioned her attraction to Japanese culture because alt-right people always cite Japan as an example of successful ethno-state. Coincidence? Probably not. Interesting.
I think it could be, though. I mean, a lot of people are interested in Japanese culture, like anime and stuff like that.
I think it's more just, she's trying too hard. I get that vibe from her.
And she's into Japan like those guys are into cigars.
The final IM of the day. Colorado guy, what are your thoughts on residency requirements for police departments, i.e. requiring a certain percentage of active police officers to live within the communities they patrol? I'm in favor of that. Much love, MR crew. All right, folks. Emma, Matt, Brendan, good job today. See you, folks, tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want. But I know somehow I'm gonna get there.